Hi everyone, I'm Alice. I've been working in Google Analytics, funnily, for the same amount of time as Search Labs when you first became a GACP, which was funny, the date on the slide earlier. So this part of the presentation is all about the different types of modelling that we have in Google Analytics. So you've seen this slide already from Diggy, but I think it's important just to reiterate the world is changing, and that's why modelling has become even more important than it ever has been in Google Analytics before. And a recent survey said that 85% of digital media professionals, their biggest challenges were around cookie loss and accurate measuring. And so this is where modelling can really come in to help these areas. And the third challenge was also attribution, which modelling can also help. So I think, yeah, this is something that's probably affecting all of you. Okay, so how does modelling help you in Google Analytics? The first thing is trying to give you a more accurate view of performance. So where you have gaps in data, and whether that's because of cookie consent or other reasons for having gaps in data, it's giving you a more accurate view of the total. That can then give you better decision making because you're making decisions on the whole set of data rather than just a subset, which is maybe a biased subset. In the case of consent, users who consent perhaps perform better on your website anyway. And then this is a privacy safe way of making up that data loss. So you're preserving measurement while still paying respect to those cookie consent choices that those users made when they came onto your website or on your app. Okay, so onto the different types of modelling that we have in Google Analytics. The first three that I'm going to talk through are all around making that complete picture of data on in your Google Analytics account, from your website data, from your app data. And the fourth is more of a forecasting metric and modelling to see what might happen in the future. So I'm going to jump into each of these. So the first is all around behavioural modelling. So why does behavioural modelling exist? I turned to Gemini to make this image for the presentation, but behavioural modelling exists when cookie consent is not given. So consent mode, we've already heard earlier, but just to reiterate, because this is super important to understand how behavioural modelling comes about. We have two different types of an implementation in consent mode, which has been touched on already. A basic implementation means that tags fire and behave as normal when consent is given. But we also have the option of an advanced implementation. And here, when consent is not given to set cookies, we can still send cookieless pings into Google Analytics. So these pings are fired and they have all of the different parameters associated with them that normally would be collected by the cookie. So still we're looking at things like what page somebody has viewed, what event they have triggered, what item they were looking at, which item they have purchased. And so we get all of these cookieless pings. And so that is what gives us the data for behavioural modelling. So these cookieless pings give us lots of different events. And you can see here, we've got 10 page views, 8 product views, 3 ad carts, 2 purchases. But we've just got these cookieless pings. They've each got a different user identifier associated with them. And so what the modelling then does is it allows us to make sense of this random collection of events to say, actually, we think that those events came from 5 different users. So we've observed all of these random events, but what the modelling does is group them together to say they came from X amount of sessions and Y amount of events. So we haven't magicked up these events. We did see them. The modelling is just counting how many users and how many sessions they came from. And so what this does, where previously, when you implemented your cookie consent banner, you might have seen a drop in traffic because you're then only collecting your consented users. When you implement advanced consent mode and you become eligible for behavioural modelling, which I'll come on to in a minute, what to be eligible means, you'll then see an increase in your traffic because you will then be able to see this modelled data alongside your observed data in the Google Analytics interface. And this is a toggle in the interface. You can choose in the admin whether you're looking at your observed data or your blended modelled data. That doesn't affect any of your underlying data set. So if you want to, you can go into the admin settings and make that change to try and understand, okay, how much of my data is coming from modelling and how much of it is observed. And a question I get asked a lot is what kind of signals are used to power that modeling, to power the behavioral modeling. So this is all coming from the consented data that we have collected through using cookies when users have said yes to that type of tracking. And then we look at a couple of different things within that data. So we look at the event type. Was this a page view? Was this a product view? Was it a transaction? Was it a form sign up? And that is taken into consideration. We also look at countries, regions, cities, because behavior is different between each of those different places. And so it means we can apply that in the modeling as well. Same for time, date, time of day, date, day of the week, etc. Those kind of signals are used as well. And then also non-identifiable information from browsers, operating systems, that kind of thing as well. And so here we really want to make sure that we're using the highest quality data. So we're using that observed data that's coming through into the platform. We only use it when we know that it's really accurate and reliable. And we also have a high bar for this data. So we don't do any fingerprinting. We don't use any really granular information that users cannot delete themselves. And so to be eligible for behavioral modeling, like what is it you need to do within your Google Analytics account? So first of all, you need to have consent mode across every single page on your site. You also need to have that advanced implementation. So if you remember before when we spoke about basic and advanced, basic doesn't send those cookieless pings. So we have none of those random events to model in the first place. So this has to be an advanced implementation of consent mode. And then there are just some thresholds as to how many events you need to be sending with that cookie storage denied, and also how many users you're coming through with that are consented, so that we've got that baseline of data to model from. It takes us a while to build this modeling. So once you meet these thresholds, it can be up to 28 days for this modeling to start appear in the interface for you. But once it does, where can you see behavioral modeling? It's basically in any user or session-based reports. So you'll get this banner across the top. Sorry if that's really small, but there's a banner across the top that says, hey, this property is now eligible for behavioral modeling, and it's included in your data. And you'll also get the little flag within the card where it's flagging any data quality issues or any sampling or anything like that. It's also a feature in that card as well that will tell you that you are seeing modeled data from unconsented users within the report that you're looking at. Okay, so another question I get a lot is this data included in the Analytics Data API? So anyone who's using Looker Studio, Tableau, etc., to pull data from Google Analytics, that is using our Data API. Our Data API replicates what settings you've got in admin for the interface reporting. So if you're using that blended reporting identity in the Google Analytics interface, that will also be replicated in the Data API as well. So yes, if you're seeing behavioral modeling in the interface, you will also see it in the Data API. And if you turned it off in the interface, it won't be included in the API either. And then the next most asked question is, what about in BigQuery? Do I see this modeling data in BigQuery? And the answer here is no. There is no modeling in BigQuery, but what you do get are all of those pings. So all of those cookieless pings that were sent to Google Analytics, you have those pings in the BigQuery export, and they have different parameters associated with them so that you know that that data is coming from cookieless pings. So for example, the privacy info analytics storage says no, because that's the consent that was not given to set cookies. The user ID says null. So the pseudo user ID, that kind of cookie ID that usually persists while a user is browsing site, that doesn't exist. So these are just the pings that have no modeling assigned to them. That's what's in the interface, that we have modeled those for the users and for the sessions. In the BigQuery export, you can do that yourself because you have those cookieless pings. So you are able to do modeling on that if you wish, but there is no modeling in the BigQuery export itself. And obviously the stats of the kind of uplift of what data you're going to see will depend on your cookie banner opt-in rates and things like that. But we have lots of case studies that are available externally of some of the kind of stats that customers see. So this one is for Nestle, and they saw a 23% increase in their observable traffic in their analytics reporting by using this feature. Okay, so that's behavioral modeling. Remember, the clue's in the name. It's about the behavior of those unconsented users on site, not to be confused with conversion modeling. I think the amount of times I've explained this internally to our Google teams, and still once a week I get at least one confused question about this terminology. So the second type of modeling that I want to talk about this afternoon is conversion modeling. Okay, so why does conversion modeling exist? This exists because when you create landing pages that have different URL parameters on them, sometimes they don't always get through into Google Analytics. And that could be because they're stripped off by somebody sharing a link from one person to another. It could be a browser that's stripping off these parameters as part of the browser settings. So what can we do about that? Without those parameters, that traffic appears as direct traffic. So you don't have any idea about what traffic source that person's come through from. But what we can do here with conversion modeling is take all of that direct bucket of traffic and model it to say, actually, we don't think that this was all direct traffic. Some of it might have come through paid search. Some of it might have come through email. Some of it might have been referrers. So again, we're taking that big direct bucket because the query parameters were stripped off and reattributing that traffic, again, based on the similar signals that we said before, to model for what traffic source we actually think that those sessions came from. And where can you see this? So this just is lumped in with any of your conversion reporting, any of your event level conversion reporting in the GA interface. This one happens automatically. So there's no implementation needed, like there is for behavioral modeling, where you have to have advanced consent mode. This happens automatically. So this is already happening in your Google Analytics 4 properties. We're already applying this logic into your data. There's nothing you need to do there. Okay, and the last one on that side of reporting and looking at your data, this one is data-driven attribution and the modeling that we do there. And we've had this for a long time in Google Analytics. It's just changed a bit, as Paul mentioned earlier, in Google Analytics 4. We're taking into account lots more elements than we were before in Universal Analytics. We're using survival analysis techniques now. And I'm going to talk you through some of those things that we look at. But the idea here is rather than giving all of the credit to that last touch point, we're making sure that it's fairly distributed across all of the different touch points that happened. So the value of these clicks, these are all the different things that we look at. So the first thing that we look at is a path comparison. So this is looking at the different touch points somebody came through, looking at what happens when one of those touch points is absent, or what about if we add an extra touch point in to see the conversion rate of that path and what difference that makes. The important thing here is that we're looking at converting and non-converting paths. So by taking that conversion rate, it means that we're looking at those people who didn't convert as well, and that's really important. And in GA4, we're looking at 20 touch points when we're looking at these paths to conversion, whereas in Universal Analytics, we were only looking at 4. Okay, and now all of the rest of these things are all brand new to GA4. We didn't do any of these in Universal Analytics. So some of the other things that we take into account are the time to event. So anything that happened more recently close to the conversion, that's going to likely get more credit than something that happened a long time ago. We also look at some of the ad features. So this is things like, do clicks work better than views? Does search perform better than display? And we take that into consideration as well. We also look at how often these conversions happen. So conversions can happen more than once. And whether your conversion is a purchase or a newsletter sign up or a file download, these models can be created for all of those different conversion types. So some of those you think they're more likely to happen more than once, and we take that into account as well. We also do some kind of calibration to look at incrementality. So how much of these conversions would have happened anyway, even if that traffic source wasn't present. And then really importantly, we also look at unresolved paths. So where somebody is midway through that decision making before making a purchase, we take into account that actually perhaps that path hasn't finished yet. We think that person's maybe going to return to site 1 or 2 or 3 more times before they actually make that purchase, or they submit that request to book in for a kitchen design, for example. So all of these things are working together across all of your different conversion types. So make sure you're marking events that are really important to you as conversions in GA4, because then we will be doing this DDA modeling for each of those different conversions. So it doesn't just have to be your purchases, it can be other steps that you want people to do on your site as well. Okay, and if you still want to know more, we do have a really, really long scientific paper. I left the QR code here so you can scan that to get straight to that paper, but that's got a lot of scientific information in and statistical modelling and things that go far above my analytics knowledge or even my master's in maths. But there's loads of information there if you so wish. And I can share these after as well if somebody's not managed to scan it yet. Okay, and then last but not least, the last type of modelling I want to talk about is our prediction modelling. So this is the one that's forward-looking. It's taking data that you've already collected in your Google Analytics property and predicting what's going to happen next. So I think this is really cool because we've never really had this before in Google Analytics. All of the reporting has been past tense and looking at what has happened, whereas this is looking at what's to come. So a couple of different examples here. At the moment, these are all based on revenue, so they are looking at conversions, transaction conversions that happen on your site. We are looking to extend this to be able to use other conversion types as well, so watch this space for that one. But at the moment, they're based around purchase probability, churn probability, and predicting how much revenue somebody is going to spend. These can be used either in audiences to build an audience to say, okay, everyone who is likely to purchase something with over 80% probability, please add them to this audience because perhaps you want to offer them a 5% discount to push them over the line, or actually perhaps you want to exclude them because you think they're going to purchase anyway, so you don't want to spend any marketing budget on them. You'd rather focus earlier on in the funnel. Revenue prediction, again, does what it says. You can set a certain amount to say, hey, anyone that you think is going to spend over £100 on my site, please target those because they're high value customers that I really want to go after. And this can also be used in analysis. So in the explore section of the tool, where you can do your kind of more ad hoc drag and drop reporting, these metrics are available in there as well. So you can really drill into this information to say like, okay, all of those people with a high purchase probability, like what traffic source did they come from? Because I want to acquire more of them. Or what products is it that they're looking at? Like which products does Google Analytics think are going to be purchased? And this is just a screenshot for what that looks like in the audience builder. So when you go into audience builder, you've got a few different options. You can kind of start from scratch. You can use templates. You'll also get some templates based on which type of website you are. So if you're a retailer, you'll get ones aimed at retailers. If you're a publisher, you'll get ones more based at publishers. And then the next tab is then the predictive ones, which what we're talking about here. So eligible if you've reached the criteria of a certain number of conversions, and that then we can create this modeling. Okay, and if you still want to know more about modeling, we do have some videos made by our product team over on YouTube. There is one on modeling. Lots of it covers what I've spoken about today, but if there's anything that you want to watch again, I would encourage you to go there. We are launching more help content on the YouTube channel as well, so it is a good resource to look at, but just watch out for some of the older stuff. It might be outdated already because we're moving so quickly. And then in the help center, I know this is a bit of a boring place to link you to, but we have been working really, really hard to improve the help center content. So there are some really good resources on behavioral modeling, on conversion modeling, and everything else in GA4 as well. So I would encourage you to go there and have a read of those articles as well.
So I'm here to talk to you about out-of-platform modeling. So just to differentiate, Alice talked about everything that happens in the Google Analytics user interface. I'm going to talk to you about modeling that you can build, models you can build yourself that are bespoke to your situation and your specific company. Let's get into it. So what do we actually mean by out-of-platform modeling? So we've talked about BigQuery and touched on that in other parts of the presentation, but just to reiterate, there's a native integration of the raw GA4 data into BigQuery. If you're not familiar with BigQuery, BigQuery is like a big cloud SQL database. There's also an SLA, service level agreement with 360, the paid version of the product with that now. So yeah, just to let you know on that. As we know, Google Analytics doesn't contain all of the information pertinent to the workings of a business and what influences customers and everything like that. It's just web and app data. So there's an awful lot of other data sources, first-party data sources that we could that are relevant to a business, such as point of sale. So we could have store transactions from point of sale data, other ad data, so out of home, TV slots, etc. That data wouldn't normally be in analytics. Business data, so businesses might have business units that they want to carve up that are bespoke to their situation. They might carve up the country geographically due to area managers and various sales patches, etc. That's all bespoke data to your business. There's the customer data, which is previous transactions, what they did, their interactions, their characteristics, and what personas they might fall into. Survey data, so we could have voice of the customer. At Havas we have YouGov, so we've got an awful lot of information we can get from brand perception, sentiment, and from that survey data. Public data, I think it's quite underused actually. There's an awful lot of public data available out there that you can get for free. Office of National Statistics, weather data, even land registry on housing and house prices, etc., can be accessed and used. So basically, what we mean by the modeling is we can ingest any of that data and all that data into BigQuery. And I think I saw a question about a data warehouse. You could create your data warehouse in Google Cloud. BigQuery is part of Google Cloud. Also, within Google Cloud, we have access to tools that are machine learning, AI, etc. All these hundreds of tools that exist in Google Cloud. So in that environment, we can. That's where you would build your own model based on all of that data. You can join it up to and manipulate it for your needs. Then you can send model data back into GA4 for activation, which I'm going to talk to you then after this part of the presentation. So just a little bit about how it actually works without getting too technical, hopefully. So on the left-hand side, you can see that we might have some subject data. So this would be an individual's data or a session or a form, etc. And we would have GA data against it, indicated on the light blue. And then we would have other first-party data. So in this case, customer data against that. So that is the initial sort of subject data. And then we've got our historic data, which is all our historic GA data, plus all of those other first-party data sources that we just talked about. Then we've got the model that sits in the cloud environment. So what we do is we can train the model on that historic data. So basically what we're doing is creating, the model is trying to understand the subject data and match it to indicators in its trained historic data of whatever metric that you're trying to calculate. So basically you're looking at similar users to the seed user, the subject user. So the data from the subject is sent into the model and then processed in the cloud environment by the model. And then again, like I said before, you inject that back into GA. What can you actually do? Anything, basically. You can do anything, but I've tried to distill it down into a few specific use cases. And then we'll talk about some hypothetical examples associated to each one of these. So yeah, predicted lifetime value is something that you could do. You can predict a probability of conversion. You can actually append a value to an individual session, or you can automate what audience a particular user would fall into and segment them as a cohort. So I'm going to run through some examples with real life brands, but these are hypothetical. So just to give you a flavor of what you can do. So predicted lifetime value. So the subject data, what we might have is everything about how from analytics about how the user found the website, what they did, what behaviors they exhibited on the website, and then what they purchased and how much it was. For example, this one, they purchased something for £65. When they transacted, they gave up a lot of first-party data. So we might have characteristics, the postcode, certain information around that individual user. What the model does is the model works out what's important. We don't tell the model to look at certain variables. So in that joined data set, the model might actually determine that these variables are key variables in valuing this particular user. So things like proximity to store. So if there's a close River Island store, that might have a bigger impact on the lifetime value of a customer versus somebody that lives further away. The whole online and offline joined up data that you've got, that might indicate there's more store transactions going on from this user. The performance of the local store might actually have a bearing on this. So yeah, that would be incorporated if it is indeed a key variable. As I mentioned before, if we're taking into account house price data around that postcode, then that could indicate that there's a potential for this user to spend an awful lot of money over their lifetime. Seasonality and weather, that plays a role, but we can access that data and the model will work out whether that's important or not. Come up with a much improved value for the user. And again, like I said before, I'll come on to what you'd actually do with that in the activation section. So second example is a B2B example. So we work with a company called Access Group. You may have or may not have heard of them. They are B2B business software. So they do accountancy, HR software, everything to do with any business, basically. So this is specifically around a form fill. So as we know, a form fill is just a form fill. That's primarily what we optimize our advertising to, but not all forms turn to business. So we're trying to bridge that gap basically here. We've got loads of information about the path that they took, what information they filled into the form, and then business data specific to business that inquired. So information we might be able to gather here is the number of employees this company has, what sector, industry they're in, the role, or are they a decision maker or not, of this certain individual who's filled the form in. What they did on the site, did they engage with key pages to signify intent, etc. The time of year, if it's about now, this time of year, budgeting might play a role in determining that they might have a heightened sense of intent to convert. So again, we can place a probability to convert for that form or that user of say 42% on that. And again, we'll come on to what we actually do with that later. So we don't have to always do things with the conversion, I suppose. We can value other actions. So this might be relevant if you are doing more upper funnel, mid funnel, things that might not necessarily result in somebody giving up their information or transacting or doing something of that nature. So we just have the path data. Somebody visited the site and did some things. So key variables in this would all be site-based, but the model could work out that they viewed, say, so this is home-based, this example, sorry, I forgot to say that. So, you know, say this is a kitchen marketing campaign, so you're selling fitted kitchens. If this user engaged with the finance page, they interacted with the kitchen planner, maybe they found the site using a brand query, search query, and then had multiple engagements, not just a single visit, that could all indicate value as well as their proximity to a physical home-based store. So again, that might mean that we put a higher value on that particular user or that session, and we can optimize to that later on. The final one is modeling related to audiences. So it's predicting the particular segment that this particular user might fall into. So this is for Pure Gym. This could be relevant to any subscription model type mechanism. So we might have this is an existing customer who uses the gyms and has an app, etc. for Pure Gym. You would have all the app data collected here, and the gym visit data, how frequent they go and how long do they stay and everything like that. So again, like I say, there's custom characteristics against that user that we will have. There's the performance of the local gym, their frequency, has it fallen, has it dropped off? It might have done recently. If they interacted with the view subscription page on the app or the website, then that might be another indicator that they're thinking about reducing or getting rid of their subscription and membership. Time of year might also play a role in that. So again, the audience segment that the machine may put them into is they might deem them at a churn risk. Those are hypothetical examples of modeling. So you can group them basically into two areas. You can model value, whether it be a value of a user, a form fill, a session, etc. Or you can model people into a segment. So, predict a persona. You could say, next likely purchase category, etc. So yeah, that's out of platform modeling.